welcome back to my channel. My name is Darian and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite 4-star reads. So I've seen people do different versions of this video, but I wanted to make it basically because I've noticed that when I do tag videos, I always bring up the same types of books. I always bring up either my 5-star reads, books that I absolutely love, my favorite books of all time, or I bring up 2 or 1-star reads, so the books I really don't like. And there's a lot of books that I really love that I gave 4 stars, and I just never talk about them on my channel. Like, I'll mention them in my wrap-up whenever I read them, and then I'll just never talk about them again. So I thought it would be nice to talk about some of these books that I still absolutely love. They're just not quite 5 stars, but they're still some of my favorite books. So yeah, I have a lot of books here. Obviously, it was kind of hard to narrow it down because all my 4-star reads, I love them all so much, and I didn't want to make this video crazy long, so I narrowed it down a bit, but I still have lots of books to talk about, so let's just get started. I'll try not to drone on forever about each and every book, but we'll see how that goes. I tend to talk a lot, it's fine. So the first book I want to mention, I don't think I've ever talked about in a video before. I know I've definitely spoken about it like with other booktubers and on Twitter and stuff, but I don't know if I've ever mentioned it in a video, but that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Is that the whole title? I just always think of it as Aristotle and Dante by Benjamin Alir Sains. I'm so sorry, I know I'm saying that wrong, but this book I read at the very end of 2019, I think, so way before I started my booktube channel, and this book just took my heart and kind of crushed it, but also sent it soaring. I thought this book was just so sweet and wholesome, but also sad, and also just a beautiful story about friendship and young love, and it's just such a beautiful book. It's about these 2 boys named Aristotle and Dante, and it's about when they meet and then they kind of develop this friendship. Especially Aristotle, it kind of takes him a while to warm up to Dante, but then they have this beautiful friendship, especially after this certain event that happens in the book, and then the feelings that they feel towards each other kind of turns into something more. And there's actually a sequel coming out, I think this year or early next year, which I didn't know about until very recently. So I'm very excited for that book because I just really love this book, and it's a book I highly recommend, especially if you're looking for a book that's kind of like a slice of life that is like heartwarming but also sad and emotional, and it just has everything you could want. So yeah, I really love this book, and I should really talk about it more because I don't think I've mentioned it before until now. So the next book I want to talk about is not actually one book, it's actually a series. I consider this a 4-star series, even though one of the books I gave 5 stars, but the rest of them I gave 4, and that is the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater. I gave the 1st, 2nd, and 4th book 4 stars. The 5th book was 5 stars. I love Blue Lily, Lily Blue. But yeah, The Raven Boys, it's a very popular series here on BookTube, so I'm sure everyone has heard of it. But it's about this group of teenagers of 4 boys called the Raven Boys, and then our girl Blue. Blue lives in a family of psychics, except Blue herself is not a psychic, but I think if I'm remembering correctly, she can like enhance people's powers. So like her family always wants her to be at their readings because she makes their power more strong. Does that make sense? I hope so. But Blue has always had this like curse where she's been told that if she kisses her true love then they'll die. So that's something that's kind of been weighing over her whole life. And then there's also this whole thing with like this Welsh king, and these kids find this like secret land, I guess. I don't know what to call it. It's a very interesting series. There's definitely a lot of elements to it. The whole first book I remember just being really confused, but it does make sense eventually, I promise. But yeah, this is just a really fun series. I really liked each book, especially the 3rd one, like I said, but this was definitely a 4-star series for me, and I know Kayla from Books and Lala just really loves this series, and I can see why it's definitely a very good series in my opinion. So yeah. The next book, oh my god, is just such a wholesome, and again, wholesome and sad at times book, and heartwarming, and a beautiful story, and that is A Man Called Uva by Frederick Bachman. This is the only Frederick Bachman book I've read, I think. I have, what's it called? Beartown, and I have Anxious People as well. I actually got an ARC for Anxious People and I never read it, I'm so sorry. But A Man Called Uva is about a man, get this, called Uva. And and his wife recently passed away and he's living alone. He's like, I don't remember how old, like 60 or 70 years old, and he's just a very like grumpy curmudgeon, and he likes doing things a certain way, and he's always trying to make trouble with his neighbors because he thinks his neighbors are doing things wrong in the neighborhood and stuff like that. Like he's kind of known as this like grumpy old man in the neighborhood, and then these new neighbors move in next door and they want to kind of befriend him, and you just find out throughout the story, you find out more about Uva's backstory, and his relationship with these neighbors develops, and it's just such it's such a good story. It'll just take your heart and like crush it, but then again it'll make it swell. And I really love Frederick Bachman's writing, and I really need to read more books from him, so that is definitely a book that I highly recommend. Okay, we knew this book was coming. The next book I want to talk about is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabbath Tahir. I know I haven't finished the series yet. I'm very sorry. This book was 4 stars for me. The second book was 4.5 stars, and I have a feeling the last 2 books in the series are gonna be very high, either 4.5 or 5 stars, but this book is a wild ride. And as we all know on this channel, I am very bad at summing up this book, so I'm just gonna read the back of the book because it's right here. And I'm just gonna read it instead of embarrassing myself, okay? Here we are. So, under the Martial Empire, defiance is met with death. There are children yelling outside. Let's ignore them. Laya and her family do not challenge the Empire. They've seen what happens to those who do. But when Laya's brother is arrested for treason, she is forced to make a decision. In exchange for help from rebels who promise to rescue her brother, she will risk her life to spy for them from within the Empire's greatest military academy. There, Laya meets Elias, the school's finest soldier, and secretly its most unwilling. He and Laya will soon realize that their destinies are intertwined and that their choices will change the fate of the Empire itself. There you go. Is that so hard, Darian? Apparently. I love this book so much. I love this series. I love where it's going. This first book is just a wild ride. Like, there's so much that happens, and the series is just so stressful, especially the second one, like, oh my god. But it's so easy to fall in love with Laya and Elias. Like, at first, she's like just so scared of everything, and I mean, like, understandably so. Like, she witnesses the murder of her grandparents at the beginning of the book, and then her brother is captured, so like obviously she's a little traumatized, but her character development in this book alone, but also like throughout the second book as well, from what I've read, is just so well done. And I love Elias. I love him so much. And there's also like a certain competition element in this book, which I always love in books. And this book is also like pretty dark. I would say, like, I know this is categorized as YA, but I would say this veers more into new adult, maybe even like dipping its toe into adult. Like, there's some dark stuff going on in this book, but it's just so good. It's so well done. I need to finish the series. I know. Don't yell at me. Okay. The next book is another one that I think I've maybe mentioned once in a video, but I rarely ever talk about this book. I did read it like a while ago. I read it maybe 2 years ago, but that is All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. This is the only book I've read from her, but I really want to read more because I really enjoyed this book. And since I read it 2 years ago, I don't remember everything about this book. What I do remember is that we're following this girl named Nicolette. What do they call her? Nick. They call her Nick. And she used to live in this small town where a girl... Oh no, it's coming back to me. She used to live in a small town where her best friend went missing one night. And after that happened, she left her hometown. She went to live in like New York or some big city like that because they never found her best friend. She was presumed dead, but you know, they never really knew for sure. Then she comes back to her hometown in present day because I think her father is dying. I think. Yeah, she has to take care of her father. That's what it says. And then while she's there, another girl goes missing. And it seems that these 2 disappearances might be linked, but she's trying to figure out what's going on. And also the way the story is told is that you start the book at like, I think it's like day 15, and then you go backwards. So day 1 is the day that she arrives in town, and day 15 is, you know, the current day, and it's told like day 15, day 14, day 13. And so through that you find out more about the disappearances and what happened and stuff. And I just loved the way this was told. I've never read a book like that before, and I mean, I did find Nick pretty annoying. I remember her mentioning so often how much she doesn't like living in a small town and how she came from a small town, and when you come from a small town, no one understands if you don't come from a small town, but all these small town people, they understand. Like, she mentioned so many times that she came from a small town, and I was like, I get it. Like, we all know at this point you came from a small town. Like, that's the only thing I really remember from this book that kept me from giving it 5 stars, but the rest of it I really liked. I didn't see the reveals coming at the end. I thought it was a really good mystery, and I really want to read more from Megan Miranda, so this is another one I highly recommend. I mean, obviously if I gave them 4 stars I recommend, but I really liked it. Okay. Okay, the next book I am very excited to talk about because I love this book so much, and that is P.S. I Like You by Casey West. Casey West, I've read 3 of her books now, and every book she just steals my heart. I'm talking about my heart a lot today, but it's true. Oh my gosh, I just love her romances so much. They're just so freaking cute, but this is definitely my favorite from her, and it was the first one I read, and I don't know how anything can live up to this book because it's just so cute. So we're following this girl who is going through a lot. I can't remember exactly what she's going through, but she's going through something. And the main focus of this book is that she one day writes song lyrics on her desk in like chemistry class or something, and then the next time she comes to that class, like the next day, someone has like finished the lyrics on the desk, so then she writes them a note being like, oh my god, you know the song, I love the song, blah blah blah, and this starts her correspondence with this person on this desk, and they seem to like really connect with each other, and the story is just so cute, and like the whole ending, oh my gosh, it's just so cute. I love this book so much. If you're looking for like just a fluffy little romance to read, I highly recommend this one. It'll just make you feel good. I don't see how anyone can read this and not feel good. So yeah, I really love this book. Please read it. It's just so cute. Oh my god. Next we have Crested City, or House of Earth and Blood, whatever, this big boy right here. And the thing with this book, which I've said before, but if you're new here, this is my thing with this book, is that when I read it, the first half of this book, I was thinking like, I'm probably gonna give this 3 stars. I was liking it, but I really was not super in love with it or anything. I kind of cared about the characters, I kind of cared about the story, but I was just like, it kind of seemed like just a lot to trudge through, and it wasn't bad by any means, but I was just like, I don't know how I'm feeling about this book. But then the second half of this book, oh my god, it was crazy. One of the best endings I think I've ever read. It's just so good. So the first half of this book was a 3 star for me, and the second half was a 5 star. So it had to be a 4 star, but I think the second half definitely made up for how I was feeling about this book during the first half of it. I should say what this is about. We're following this girl named Bryce who is living in Crested City, and this is where like a whole bunch of different fantastical creatures live, and Bryce has experienced some prejudice because she is half fae, half human, so people see her as like this half-blood or half-breed. She goes through this traumatic event at the very beginning of the book, and I know that this event is described in the synopsis, but I would encourage you not to read the synopsis of this book because I think it's more impactful if you don't know what happens going into this book. But anyway, she experiences this really traumatic event, so she spends a lot of the book dealing with the aftermath of that, and then there's also like this mystery going on that she's trying to help solve because it has to do with what happened at the beginning of the book, and she also has the help of this angel named Hunt, and they have a little romance going on, and it's just a really fun time. I mean, I know I said the first half like was a lot to get through, but if you're like me and you didn't love the first half, I would really encourage you to keep going because the second half of this book is just so crazy and it's so good, and I was crying by the end. Oh my god, this book was just ugh. And I'm really excited to read the second book because I really want to know what happens after this book. So yes. The next book is another one that I don't talk about a lot, and that is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This book follows this woman named Eleanor Oliphant, and you're in her head the whole book, and right away you can tell that something's a little off with her. She's very socially awkward. She doesn't really know how to handle social situations, and she actually kind of reminds me of Uva in that like she likes to do things a certain way. She always does the same thing every day, and you know from the beginning that something happened to her in her past, and there's just something weird going on and you don't know what. It's just about her life and her trying to put herself out there and her meeting this guy who becomes her friend and him helping her out, and then you slowly find out more about what she's been through in her life. And it's just another beautiful story. I found at the very beginning of the book, being in her perspective, I was like, oh my god, like it was a little hard to read because like she just did not know how to handle situations very well. I found myself just getting annoyed with her, but then like once you learn more about her, it's like, oh my god, I feel so bad for being annoyed with you. Like, I don't know, she's just such an endearing character, I found, and I really ended up loving being in her head, and I loved seeing the world through her eyes, and I just really felt for her. And I mean, she's been through a lot and I love her, and yeah, so this is another one obviously I highly recommend, but I definitely need to talk about this book more as well because I really loved it. Okay, next is a book that I just finished like last week, and that is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This book was so good. I loved this book so much. I can tell that this is going to be like a favorite middle grade series for me because this book was 4 stars, but I have a feeling the rest of the series could be 5 stars because this book definitely was a lot of setup for the rest of the series, but I loved the ending of this book. Again, let me explain what this is about. We're following this girl named Morgan Crow, and her whole life she's been told that she is a cursed child. Everything bad that happens in her town, village, city, I don't remember. Everything bad that happens, people blame it on her because she's supposed to be cursed, and she's also been told that she is going to die on her 11th birthday, but instead of dying, she is whisked away by this man named Jupiter North, who I love very much, and she's brought to this city, I guess, called Nevermore, this land, I don't know. This is not the land.
It's the land of your people. This is not the land. This is Glendale.
She's brought to Nevermore, where she enters trials, it's in the name, to become a member of the Wondrous Society, and this is just such a fun book. I love Morgan so much. I love all the friends she makes in Nevermore, and I'm just so interested to see where the series goes because, like I said, I love the ending of this book, so I definitely highly recommend this book if you haven't picked it up yet, and I'm so excited to read the rest of the series. Oh my gosh. Next is a book I read earlier this year, and that is Moon of the Crested Snow by Wabgishig Rice, and this book I listened to on audiobook, and I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook because I think the narrator just sets the scene so perfectly. This is definitely a very quiet book, but very eerie, and I don't want to say too much about what it's about because it's very short, but you're following this indigenous community up north in Canada, and they are getting ready for winter because winter is approaching, but all of their like electricity and all the power and like their cell service goes out, and like their pipes stop working, so they have no electricity, no running water, their ovens and stoves don't work and everything, and they just cannot figure out why, and there's just something strange going on, but you don't really know what's going on. And then like this mysterious person comes to town and they're like, who is this? Like, I don't want to say more than that, but it's just such a well-written book, and like I said, it's very quiet, and it kind of feels like it's building up to like this explosive ending or something. And the ending, I just love the way it was done because it stayed like with the quiet feel to it, but it was still like, what? You know what I mean? I don't want to say anything too spoiler or anything, but I just really enjoyed this book, and I highly recommend it. And I would also recommend reading this in the winter time because I remember I would listen to this on my walks, and like every time I listened to it, it would be snowing a lot, which like kind of added to that eerie feeling because for them, like, they're stressed because winter is approaching and they have no heat and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh my god. So yeah, that would be a perfect time to read this book, but I definitely recommend. Okay, I'm almost done, I promise. I promise I narrowed this list down, but maybe I should have done it more. But anyways, the next book is One by One by Ruth Ware. This is another book that would be great to read during the winter, which I also did, so I am great at that apparently. But this is a relatively new book, so I think most people have heard of this, but it's about these co-workers from this startup company who go up to this like ski lodge in France. I think it's France, and you're following the perspective of one of these co-workers and also one of the women who works at the ski lodge, and then there's this huge avalanche that happens and they end up snowed in this lodge, and then people start dying one by one. And a lot of people didn't like this book very much, but I really liked it. Like, it is definitely a very simple premise, and like when you find out who the killer is, it's not the most shocking twist in the world or anything, but I still really enjoyed the storytelling of this, and I loved how everything was revealed. And also the end of this book had me so stressed. Like, oh my god, I remember just reading this and my heart was beating. The ending was so stressful. I really liked it, and this was my first Ruth Ware book, so I have nothing to compare it to, but I'm really excited to read the rest of her books because I really love this. Next we have a book that was really popular last summer when it came out, and then the hype around it has kind of died down, so I'm gonna try to hype it up more to put it back on people's radar, but that is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This book is also just really cute and like heartwarming, but also sad at times. Apparently I love those books is what we're learning today. But this follows this girl named, what's her name? Liz. We're following Liz, and she's in her graduating year of high school, and she really wants to go to this music college, but she finds out that she wasn't accepted, so she would need a scholarship to go. And then she finds out that whoever wins prom king and queen at her school wins a scholarship, which is wild to me. But anyways, so Liz is like, oh okay, I'll try out for prom queen. Or do you try out? You run for prom queen. I don't know. I don't know these things. And she's like not the kind of girl that you would expect to run for prom queen, you know, like she usually keeps to herself and whatnot. And then there's another girl who's running for prom queen, and they become friends and maybe a little bit more, and it's just such a sweet book. And again, there's also like sadness to it, like her mother had passed away a while ago and her brother is also sick, so the story also centers around illness, so it can get kind of sad sometimes. It's just such a nice story, and if you haven't picked this up yet, I would highly recommend, and I hope people kind of hype this book up more now. I know it's been a year, but it's still really good, so I really recommend. And this is also like a great read to read in the summer, I think. It's just a good book, so yeah. Okay, we have our last book, and my battery is flashing, so I'll try to make this quick, but the last book I want to mention is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This book follows, it's kind of like a whodunit mystery. We're following this cast of characters who are going to this wedding on this remote island in Ireland, I think it's Ireland. And then at the beginning of the book, you start out like the night of the wedding and someone is found dead, but you don't know who. And then it goes back to the day that everyone is arriving at the wedding. And so you kind of start to learn more about each character, and the whole book you're just wondering who died, and then you find out at the end of the book who died, and then you have all this information about these characters, and you're like, well, this person had a motive to kill them, but also this person had a motive to kill them. And I just love the way this was told. It was just such a fun mystery, and I was just guessing at who would die and who killed them, and I got the killer right. I was very proud of myself, but I know some people, again, don't really like this book. I thought it was really fun. I just really liked the mystery, so another book that I would highly recommend. Okay. Okay, we made it to the end. Those are a bunch of 4-star reads that I would highly recommend. I definitely have more, but I had to, like I said, narrow my list down. But let me know what your favorite 4-star book is, and I would love to check it out. And also let me know if you've read any of these books, if you like them. Let me know your thoughts down below. Would love to hear it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye! I would just like to show the world that this is Laszlo while I was filming. Okay, bye.